This episode is sponsored today by the book 10 Tips on How to Survive Your Parents' Divorce. This book was written by kids. It's for kids. It's a coloring book. When you have a tragedy of divorce and you have young children who do not know how to express themselves, this coloring book, 10 Tips on How to Survive Your Parents' Divorce, is the coloring book for them. Pick it up today at blendingthefamily.com or even on Amazon. 10 Tips on How to Survive Your Parents' Divorce. Again, written by kids.
Welcome to Blending the Family, the podcast. Topics can range from dads hitting rock bottom, daughters watching their parents divorce, or even what's a good wine for couples to have while talking about finances. Here's your host, who once did 25,106 steps in one day. Unbelievable. Way to go. Here he is, Tommy Maloney.
Welcome to another edition of the podcast known as Blending the Family. I am your host, Tommy Maloney, and for the record, I did 13,390 steps. As of right now, let me look at my phone. 201 steps. That's why I just put my shoes on and I'm going to go for my walk and get those steps a-moving and a-grooving. On this episode of the podcast known as Blending the Family, we have a dear friend, Brett Zachman. Hey, my friends call me Zach. I love him to death. He is a good friend. Not only is he a good friend, because of meeting him is how I ended up meeting my wife, Ann. So he is good folk. He's family. He is family. By the way, his computer fan kicked on during the interview, so it sounds like somebody's doing some weed whacking in his office. So I apologize for that, but we have such a great conversation. I didn't want to redo it. We talk open, honestly, two guys talking about being dads, being men. We even talk about the Me Too movement. As far as dads, how do you talk to your kids about that? How do you talk to your sons about that? So I'm super, super excited that we talk about that. And by the way, speaking of talking, there is some adult language that we used. But anyway, Brett Zachman, founder of BeMen, bmen.org, great organization that I hope you will support after listening to this episode. What else is going on? I just checked right before I started recording. Thank you for all those that have been leaving ratings and reviews on however you get this fun-filled, excitement podcast. Thank you so much. I was looking at iTunes and have some new reviews. So thankful, so grateful. What else is going on? June 11th, we are going to be launching a crowdfund campaign on a website called Publicizer for the new book, My Dad's Advice at 5:04 a.m. Two of the bonuses I want to briefly mention. One is you could possibly be a guest on this podcast. Another bonus for the pre-sale launch is you might get your name in the book too. So get ready, stay tuned, sign up for the newsletter at blendingthefamily.com, and you will read more information about what's happening on the June 11th launch. Go to the website, check out the Facebook page, Blending the Families on Facebook. Or just go to my Facebook page, Tommy Maloney, or go to my LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn at the Tommy Maloney. Also, I've been doing some changes on the website. I'm learning how to use WordPress. I really want to talk about coaching. I really want to talk about that. If you or maybe your family needs some coaching, head over to the website. I put together two simple packages. One is a one day The other package is a 3-month program. Okay, there you go. Newsletter, launching the crowdfund campaign on Sizer on June 11th, and the coaching. All right, there you go. Zach. All right, Zach Zachman is our guest. Again, check out the website, BeMen.org. BeMen.org. I'm super excited about this episode, as you can probably tell. And I've got another guest coming up that, a friend, just a friend. And we'll go more into detail when you hear that. But I gotta go. I gotta go for my walk. I gotta get my steps in because I really am trying to be consistent. I've only missed Monday. Monday, I think, was less than 900 steps. But that's not the point. The point is, you are going to enjoy this episode of the founder of BeMen.org, Brett, Zach. My friends call me Zach. Zachman. There you go. All right. As my new friend, okay, he's not really my friend yet. Terry Crews, congratulations, Terry Crews, on your show getting picked up, leaving Fox, going to, I think, NBC. Anyway, as Terry Crews would say, just remember, folks, friends, your success is my success. I do the introductions later.
Okay.
When I start putting it together, but I wrote down, I have a pen, but I didn't write down any questions because you're like the closest friend I've ever interviewed. And I don't know if I know too much about you, but
you probably do.
Not where the dead bodies are, not that type of.
Right.
But I just wanted this to because one of the things I've thought about for a long time is having you on this podcast because of not only your background with BeMen, but your background in the financial world, because you see a lot of us men struggle, especially after divorce, the financial piece.
Totally. It's pervasive.
Don't give me big words, Zach.
Oh, sorry. Wait. It happens a lot.
By the way, I titled this, My Friends Call Me Zach, even though my name is Brett.
Of course you did.
Yeah. So what, as you can tell, we're diving into it. So what can you offer? And as of lately, I've really been picking on the men because it still seems that mentality-wise, we're still in the 1950s. We're still afraid to ask for help. We're still afraid to ask for directions. We're still afraid of realizing that we can't fix everything and shouldn't fix everything. What's your feeling? What's going on especially with your organization, BeMen? What are you seeing as far as men getting better at?
Sure. Well, first of all, we have to be patient. And there's this cliche out there supposedly that patience is a virtue. I'm not sure I have that virtue in full. I continue to work on it. But patience is first and foremost being patient with self, and then being patient with each other, and then probably lastly being patient with a movement. You know, if men have behaved a certain way for 2 millennia, why do we think that we'd wake up tomorrow, snap our fingers, and 2 weeks later we're all going to start behaving differently? Like that's just not going to happen, right? It's not realistic.
So when you say a movement, Zach, what's that in the background?
What's that?
What's in the background?
Oh, I think the fan on my computer turned on.
Oh my gosh! I thought somebody was doing some weed whacking back there in your office.
Yeah, no. As Seinfeld would say, anything wrong with that, don't partake.
Yeah. Where the hell are we going?
Movement.
Movement.
Yeah. So BeMen just launched this workshop series. We did our first one last fall. We're going to do another one this fall. Then we envision doing it quarterly. that then would lead up to maybe even some type of like a national conference kind of setting. And we entitled it The Masculine Movement. And so I think the big question on the table that you're talking about is, well, what does that mean, right? Be men, that's simple. Tommy, be a man. Or, the masculine movement, masculinity. Well, you go look up these terms in Webster, you look up man or you look up masculinity, and it says, the art of manhood, or possessing characteristics generally held by men. And you're like, what the hell? That's a non-definition. Like, hey, awesome, thanks very much. Cleared up my cosmic question there. So, and right now in America, there's all these labels being thrown around, especially regarding masculinity. And the big one is toxic, right? They're putting the word toxic in front of masculinity. Well, first and foremost, that's a label, because being masculine, being a man, born a man who is masculine, who has masculine traits, that's not good or bad. It just is. It's not until we decide, okay, well, these parts of being a man are good and these parts of being a man are bad, or Tommy's behavior is good or Zach's behavior is terrible.
But when you say a movement, because somebody, our friend Polly,
Yes.
she was talking to me about, she feels, and Polly is a self-publishing coach that both Zach and I know. But when I met with her, she was talking about, her thought is that that's going to be. Are you kidding me?
Is that my fan?
That's not mine.
That's the only thing I can think of. There's nothing. I'm in a closed office with the door closed. There's nothing else going on.
It makes me have to do some editing anyway.
Sorry.
No, you're not. So Polly's thought is that when you talk about a movement, she was talking about that would be the next thing, is that there'll be a men's type movement to not really counteract the Me Too movement, but to be more out there, to show that. And I don't want to put words in her mouth, but it just sounds like that what she wants to do is, or what she was saying to me is, that there's going to be a men's type movement to show that there really are good men out there, that it's not all these idiots in the world that are being idiots.
Totally. So that is, you just grabbed it. So I've been using the metaphor for a bit now. In fact, I'm going to go meet again for coffee with a 19-year-old. And the metaphor came out with him, the metaphor of a pendulum. So, we know how this works, right? There's the 4 or 5 balls, and you swing it, and then bang, and it zooms way over here, and then it zooms way back over here, and then back and forth. Well, as I see it, of masculine, feminine traits in America, well, we all well know that the patriarch has kind of ruled for like 2,000 years. So the pendulum was way over here, right? Like masculine was good and first class, and feminine was not so good or second class. And then women said, okay, baloney. The last 100 years, we're going to do this thing called the feminist movement. We got to create this equality. And so the pendulum starts swinging. But now I'm starting to talk to a lot of men, and this 19-year-old was an example. His father wasn't in the picture. His mom, single mother, with 5 kids, 4 sisters, so he's surrounded by estrogen. And here's what he said. No, I'm watching this Me Too thing, and I don't think that they're going for equality, Zach. I think they're going for supremacy. Like they want to be up here and we're down here. Well, what he's describing is the pendulum swinging back the other way, right? Not back to middle, but over here where now, and that's just natural, right? If females were held as second-class citizens for too long, and now they're taking charge, and then it'd be natural to swing back the other way, where now it's almost like, oh, you're a man? Well, you're guilty until proven innocent, because you're a man, Tommy. And my feeling is exactly what you said. The job of BeMen and the movement of a masculine movement is, let's bring us back to the middle. Women are great. Men are great. Women can behave in not great ways. Men can behave in not great ways. But the vast majority of ordinary men, right? Not millionaires, not celebrities, not prima donna, rock stars, athletes, whatever, just everyday average Joes are really quality human beings.
So what can we do? Um, I was just thinking, it was the second time you and I got together. And one of the biggest takeaways that I still use today is a life lesson you taught me was about how this is going to be hard to visualize on a podcast, but when two men approach each other, we have that affinity of, oh my gosh, am I competing against this person versus what you always taught me was come around to the side and start building a partnership versus being two adversaries.
Yeah.
Do you think
Yes.
that could be part of the movement is to for men to finally realize that we're not always in competition. There's nothing wrong with having some competition, but we're not always in competition. We should be in the process of helping each other versus trying to beat each other down. Do you see that as part of this men's movement?
100%. So I know you and I have both enjoyed athletics over the years. So let's use one that you love even more than me, hockey, right?
Right.
How many guys are on the ice? It's five plus goalie.
Yes. Well, there's 12.
Oh, but just like on one team, right?
Oh,
So,
right. Six.
yeah. Okay, so Wayne Gretzky, right? Arguably one of the greatest guys to ever grace the ice. But if he didn't have five other quality guys, four other guys out there with him, plus a good goalie, is he going to win anything?
I'm gonna say no, just for the. But then he was really good, Zach.
Yeah, he was really good. So, or Michael Jordan. There's another example, right? Like these unbelievable phenom alien type men that were just extraordinary. They have glass ceilings too, because they could only take five other guys so far by themselves, literally. Like, hey, I'm going to go skate 1-on-6.
Right.
You all watch me, right? Um, and and why I use that example is that's how most men get introduced to competition early in our lives, right? It's sports and it's organized sports, it's team sports. And so we're taught very early on to work together in sports. Yet somewhere there's this metamorphosis in our 20s where when you shift into our adulting years, suddenly we're playing a solo sport called life. And now I don't have two guys, five guys, 10 guys, 200 guys on my team. I got me, myself, and I. And I've got to prove to you and everybody else that I got this thing called life. I've got to do it all on my own, all by my big self, you know, lone wolf, island in a hurricane. And that's not realistic. I mean, that's great as long as everything's going well, as you and I have talked in the past. But when the crap, or there's two men on this podcast, when the shit hits the fan, me, myself, and I is not a good team. In fact, it's no team. So you're going to want support, and asking for support isn't weakness. Now, since you brought up competition, here's my thought on competition. Here's healthy competition. In that organized sport, etc., right? We're working together to get a goal, make something happen. That's good. Here's not healthy competition. When we start sprinkling in scarcity, right? It's not win-win, it's win-lose. So now in life, I'm competing with Tommy because I got to get to the car and the woman and the cash and whatever, fill in the blanks first. Because if I win, you lose, or vice versa. Well, that is not the same as connection. And that's not the same as team sports. Because now it's team of one, and now it's every man, woman, and child for themselves, right? Because it's just survival of the fittest.
Um, Not that Tim Ferriss needs any more downloads, but he had a great interview with Terry Crews. And for
Okay.
those that don't know who Terry Crews is, he's on Fox TV, some police show, but he was one of the original Old Spice guys. He's a fantastic artist. He's also makes furniture, but he was talking about his days when he was in the NFL. And there was one particular story when Tim Ferriss was interviewing him about competition. And Terry Crews um, asked one of his teammates what the route was. He was a little confused. And his teammate told him to run it a certain way. So Terry Crews goes out, runs the route. And one of his coaches said, "Crews, what are you doing?" He goes, "I'm running the route." He goes, "That was the wrong route. What were you thinking?" Well, his so-called teammate is on the sidelines laughing at him. That's when Terry Crews really had his own epiphany about talking about competition. And that, again, here were two men, the same football team, and they were worried about having competition when they should have been worried about the other team. And one of the things that Terry talks about is again this so-called future men's movement is that we men need to well, not totally in my view, but we need to really take a step back and realize that as men we should be again helping each other versus trying to put each other down, trying to manipulate each other. And
Mhm.
i mean I mean it's it's fun in my world as a podcaster these days because I interview men and women in the same space of parenting coaching and book authors. And all I want is, and this is again, this has been my line lately because I've been so immersed in uh, Terry Crews is, I'll tell you to this way, Zach. Zach, your success is going to be my success. And I really firmly believe that if we start thinking that way, men and women, life would be so much better.
Yeah. Well, and you're absolutely right. And so there's a term out there that this is what I call it. I call it generational modeling, right? So it's well known in psychology, and there's kind of the nature nurture argument. So in nurture, you become what you're surrounded by. So very first and foremost, who's your mom and who's your dad? Because your little guy or gal, this is who you model. And we're like sponges. So we're learning every moment of the day, whether we think so or not. Things to do, things not to do, what to say, what not to say, how to behave, how to interact. And so think of boys. And you're absolutely right. I mean, think back to, sandlot ball or the playground or, just even, passing in the halls. Boys are taught real early on that the way you connect is you got to do the smackdown, right? Like who has the greatest cut down? That's the guy. Wow, look at Tommy, man. He's awesome. He can slice and dice anybody in a moment's notice. Look at him, right? And it's weird. I think it might tap into, I can't put my thumb on it, but Dr. Wayne Dyer talked a lot about men lead the first half of their lives based on all external factors, primarily due to ego.
Mm-hmm.
Thinking, okay, so show me a 4 or an 8-year-old or a 12-year-old who even knows what the hell an ego is. They're not cognitive about that. But somewhere hardwired in our DNA is this little healthy competition gene that says, I don't know how to come up and give Tommy a hug as a 10-year-old and say, dude, I love you, man. But I do know how to cut Tommy down because he's wearing glasses or his hair's shorter than mine or, he's got an innie instead of an Audi. I used to get teased mercilessly. Dude, I've got an Audi. And people are like, on this podcast, are probably thinking, what the hell are you talking about? I'm talking about belly button.
Yep.
Yeah, I had an Audi belly button. Now, medically, what you can come to understand later is that just means, it poked out a little bit when they tied off the umbilical cord a little bit differently on me. But holy God Almighty, I got teased mercilessly because my little thing poked out instead of in. I didn't want to go to the swimming pool if I was around all my buddies for the anxiety of, oh my God, here we go again. Like they're all going to slice and dice me over my damn belly button.
Right.
Isn't it? And it's curious, isn't it? It's so humorous. Now, humorous now.
Right.
You're like, oh God.
But it's a valid point because you're, so-called different, but it goes back to you're still a guy, and
Yeah.
because maybe I, I look at my parents and God love my parents because they must have raised me right, because I don't give a crap if you're an innie, outie. I don't care if you're gay, straight, red, white, blue, green. I don't care. I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt. I mean, it goes back to, again, when we first started talking many, many moons ago about, approaching each other and just giving each other, again, the benefit of the doubt. And I, I I'm really confused these days because in I'll be 100% honest, and I'm probably going to get myself into trouble, but I'm really scared because of the Me Too movement. And I say that because I don't know how to, if I'm in a situation where I'm meeting a woman for the first time, I don't know how to do that anymore because now
Yeah.
the Me Too movement is such under a microscope. And as a man, you're under a microscope even more that, wow, he shook my hand in a weird way. What does that mean? I mean, just like,
Yeah.
I,
No, that's a valid point. So if we're talking about innies and outies, right? I mean, that's a joke about belly buttons, but right now and today, we could talk about how much of a tan you and I have or don't have. Now, you and I don't have great tans. We're wearing our Colorado winter white, so we get along just fine. But what if I look like I grew up in Jamaica? And you know where I'm headed, right? I'm talking about race. Um, and that's our adult version of innie outie. Oh, you're different, so that means I can't like you, know you, hang around you, this, that, and the other. And I'm happy that you are who you are, that you don't see it that way. Um, and and so here we are, and it's thinking through, okay, well, how do we get around that? So I'm sure many people over generations of time have felt hypersensitive about race, like they're under a microscope. And now we're doing it with gender, right? So men are guilty until proven innocent. And my thought is, guys, let's not be scared of this. Just continue being who you are. And if a woman is going to be that hypersensitive that she's looking for an insult where there is none, well, we can't own that. We can only be accountable and responsible for our actions, our behaviors, our words. We can't be responsible for what's going on in somebody else's mind. Now, having said that, though, I think one of the greatest benchmarks about the Me Too movement was posted by one of the guys in BeMen, Jeff Ruiz. Great gentleman. And Jeff posted up a little poster that talked about your daughter and women in general. And I think that's kind of an easy benchmark. If the woman next to you in the conference room or beside you or at the soccer field or wherever the hell you are, church, I don't care. If you thought about her being your daughter or your sister or your mother, and then think through how you're going to interact with her, well, that's a pretty good benchmark. I mean, if you're saying stuff to a woman that, God forbid, you'd never in any day of your life say to your daughter, your sister, or your mother, well, now you probably just in hockey speak skated past the thin ice line.
I was just thinking, you're raising two boys.
Mm-hmm.
What conversations have you had uh, about both men's movement? Not to the point where you're really talking, 360 speak, but again, raising two boys. For example, I've had this conversation with my son Connor because him being a brother to two sisters. I had this conversation with him years ago, telling him, "You will never hit a woman."
Oh
I
yeah,
and
right.
and at the same time, at the same time, our teenagers are going through this Me Too movement. So again, what type of conversations have you had or will have?
Sure. Um, it's a good question. And so you think about that modeling and that they're watching all the time.
Right.
You do and what you don't do. So one of my mentors, Mike Wolf, the CEO of Five Rings, I think has taught me some incredible lessons. And he has said that leadership, they should change the word. It's exampleship. You lead by example, and you're always leading by example all the time. And so I'm really, aware of that. How am I behaving? And then the other thing is, so kind of indirectly, the soft approach, I invite them to go to BeMen events. So when we go take the kids, the orphans, out for bowling, pizza, and soda, they come too. Because it's teaching them, okay, this is what it looks like when a bunch of men are together and how do men interact. And then it's also teaching them, well, this is how I interact with people perhaps less fortunate than I am. And I think for either, in this case, a 16 or an almost 18-year-old, it's the same as a 36-year-old or a 48-year-old, that it takes them a couple of hours out of their own troubles. Whatever's going on in Instagram or Snapchat or in their whatever history class or on the lacrosse field, they're not worried about some of those petty issues because they're involved in giving back to someone, which helps them be more grounded. So that's a really great indirect approach, right? To invite men into these events. The direct approach of, well, what am I saying to them? I've learned that if I try to be like, all teaching all the time, they're like checked out.
Yeah.
So they come out. Okay. You can almost see, like, they don't say it with their outside voice, but you can see their inside voice, like on a PA down at Mile High going, shit, here goes dad again. It's time for another lecture. Should I turn up my earbuds?
Earbuds.
Yeah, exactly. How long's this one going to be? The last lecture was, but I will, Tommy, at times, like here's a great example. And I don't know, maybe I'm embarrassed to say this because this actually happened.
Hold on. Hold on. You're saying now you're embarrassed after talking about your personal struggle of having an Audi versus an innie?
That's right.
Zach.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, there's that. I can say anything I want now, like snorting pixie sticks when we were kids. There's nothing more embarrassing than it versus an Audi. Um, I will use examples for like little teaching moments. So years ago, I go on a second date with a gal. Go over to a block party. My buddy's hosting it. Seems like it goes pretty well, but the night stretches on, and she's not very respectful of my time. I want to leave at 11 p.m., and we end up leaving at 1 a.m. And then, so we get in the car, and we're driving her car home, and I'm driving. And so, typical Zach speak, I can't keep my mouth shut, so I have to ask. Now, it wasn't rude and no colorful metaphors and no put downs, none of that crap like back on the playground. I just said, hey, so how does it work with you, when a man's ready to go and you're not? Like, I'm trying to understand better. Well, it escalated a little bit, and she threw in God, and I got a little frustrated and made a comment like, well, I'm not really having a conversation with God right now, I don't think. I'm trying to have a conversation with you. And here's what happened. That got honest to God's truth. Such offense, she asked me to pull the car over and then asked me to get out of her car. So she literally like dropped me off at 1 o'clock in the morning at Hamden University in Denver, Colorado. And I walked 30 minutes back to my buddy's place. Now, the next day, I used that as a teaching tool for my son. And I said, let me explain to you what happened last night, and let me explain to you what I think about this. You will never, ever, ever in your lifetime, I don't care if it's a girlfriend, if it's just a gal pal, if it's your wife, right? You never, ever would do that to any woman. And I don't care if you're in downtown, the middle of downtown, and she has a cell phone and it seems like it's not a big deal. You do not treat a woman like that. Your job is to protect her, even if she is busy hammering on you verbally or emotionally, right?
So what you're saying is even worst case scenario, you don't drop a woman off side of the road. You just you deal with it, correct?
Correct. And I know, since we were talking about this Me Too movement and the pendulum and the checks and balances between men and women, there's a lot of guys that are going to listen to this and go, yeah, but Zach, man, look at this double standard that's going on, man. We're guilty until proven innocent, and they're angels until we can determine that they're behaving more like beaches. Now, that's my word I like to use for it. They're getting a little sandy and salty, right?
Yeah.
And here and I shake my head and I'm like, I get it. I got you. I'm right there with you. And not a but. And isn't it better if we take the high road? Like, yes, there is a double standard, but at the end of the day, we have to answer to ourselves, right? So you finish your merry-go-round. Can you look back on your life, you and I, and sit in our offices and think, yeah, I'm Tommy Maloney. I've completed my ride, and I'm pretty damn happy with the job I did.
Yeah, I mean it really is a double standard when you talk about that and that that's I mean that's a rough situation to be in. I mean, number one, you're driving her car.
Mm-hmm.
Again, like you were saying, you wanted to leave at 11 o'clock and it wasn't until 1 o'clock. That I mean that's a great example of, like you said, taking the high road. But seriously though, what I mean, let's just play the what if game, Zach. And what if she was physically abusive to you as you were driving?
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, absolutely. And so when we start to break down some of these labels, so on the spectrum of abuse, like Me Too is the very subtle, right? It's like, hey, you really shouldn't have said that in the cafeteria room with that gal next to you, right? Very mild. All the way up to the other end, the super dramatic theatrical is domestic violence, death, rape. I mean, things that are just disgusting. And so it's really thinking through, okay, who am I in this situation? Because a lot of times we talk about domestic violence and the immediate assumption is, well, men are the perpetrators and women are the victims. Well, what's starting to come out now more recently is some, I don't know the exact numbers, but I'm going to guesstimate like a third is women perpetrating against men. Now you talk about something nobody wants to talk about. What man is ever going to admit, even to some of their best friends, right? Hey, by the way, my wife beat the crap out of me last night when we got into an argument. Not in this lifetime, right? And you start looking at like shelters and stuff for people in those scenarios. I mean, it's like 90-10. 90% of it is focused on the feminine side of the equation, the female side. And you'd be hard pressed to find a single shelter or place that's going to support a man that's gone through that. But yet, we're all human beings, right? I mean, our propensity for violence doesn't start and stop with our gender, it's about behavior. So I've been teaching my sons because, hey, let's be honest, they're teenagers. They've lost their minds temporarily. They don't listen to me. Sometimes they don't listen to their mother. And they can get into some heated arguments. And then I'm trying to coach and teach them, okay, well, you have options. If someone, anyone, a parent or otherwise, is screaming and yelling at you, are you going to engage? Like you and I, instead of talking right now, we're in a screaming match. Do I have to win that screaming match? Well, my ego would say, yeah, I got to beat Tommy down, baby. I got to win this ball game. But there's a different approach, right? And you got to look at to higher individuals, the people like the Gandhis and the Mother Teresas and the Martin Luther King Juniors of the world, to say, you know what? I don't have to engage. I mean, Tommy could be super lit up, screaming his head off at me, and I could very calmly say, it sounds like it's not a good time for us to talk, and hang up that phone. Or if we're in the same room together, say, it's not a good time for us to talk, and walk out of the room. Easy to say, hard to do.
Well, one of the things that you were talking about, about men being abused, one of my dearest friends and somebody that, if he ever comes out to Colorado, his name is David Pittman. He's been on this podcast, but he is somebody you two just would hang out with all day.
Awesome.
And David's story is he talks about when he was at a church camp, he was sexually abused. And, that's that. I mean, so if you're a man and your wife or girlfriend, hits you, yeah, you're not going to have that conversation with your buddies. If you get sexually abused by another man, that's another conversation that you're not going to have with your buddies.
Correct.
Two sad examples, and this is why I go back to when we first started, that my hopes and dreams, and part of my day today, I've been revamping the Blending the Family website, where I wanted to add more context to my own story of battling depression. Twice this week, I've written. I wrote a guest blog post for one organization. I'm working on my weekly column, but I used the same scenario when I was going through my divorce because I was too afraid to ask for help. I was too afraid to admit I was struggling. I was too afraid to get out of my own way. And my little saying was, I would buy a bottle of wine and start thinking, well, what goes with red wine besides red wine other than red wine? So those were just things that started popping in my head lately, is that women are just, we know women don't have as many issues about asking for help. And I'm probably generalizing and I apologize, but I really wish more and more men, and especially with your organization of the BeMen, where you're helping more and more men realize it's okay to cry. It's okay to understand you're struggling. It's okay to understand that you might be financially in a deep hole, but let's work together to figure it out. And it just frustrates the hell out of me that we're still not there yet.
Yeah. Well, and so I don't think you have to apologize about generalizing at all. Think through the nurturing that goes on. Let's just keep it to this country. In America, women from like almost day one, when they're little girls, are taught it's okay to be emotional. In fact, you should be emotional because you are emotional because you're going to be a woman. Then they're taught it's okay to ask for help. In fact, they're taught you should. And think about like nonprofit 101 in America. Well, cause effect world, surrounding effect is negative symptom. Pick it. Homeless youth, battered women, people dying of cancer. We don't like those things. We're compassionate. So we build a service to mitigate a symptom and then tell you how we can deliver it economically. Well, who are the two main categories that nonprofits typically service that have sort of been labeled helpless? Women and children. So all around us, we are sending a message to young girls who grow up to be women that it's totally okay to be emotional. You should be emotional. You are emotional. It's totally okay to ask for help. You should ask for help. We're going to help you. Now let's shift the spectrum over to the men's side of the ballgame. Don't ask for help. Don't ever admit weakness. Survival of the fittest. Darwinism. Our egos are in the way. If you admit to me that you're weak about money or in your marriage or whatever the case is, it's almost like subconscious that I back away from you because I think almost like it's an illness, right? Oh God, like Tommy lost all his money. Don't touch him because if I catch the lose all your money disease, I'm going to lose my money too. Or you mentioned a great one, depression, mental health in America. We treat it almost like it's a phobia with men. Like if you and I are not on this podcast, but we're sitting next to each other at the bar, and you admit, hey, I'm struggling with depression and I'm taking a couple of meds for this, our almost knee-jerk response is, okay, don't rub elbows with Tommy, because if I catch that depression thing, I don't want to be right there with him. Now, I'm being kind of dramatic to make it sound ludicrous, because it is ludicrous, but it is how our brains are kind of wired and what we're taught. So BeMen, the idea is, I don't want to deliver a service. I don't want to mitigate a symptom. I want to generate a container, which is this safe place, a safe place for men of all shapes, all sizes, all colors, all creeds to come together and start interacting with each other to hear this kind of message that you're talking about. Hey, you're okay, and I'm okay. Oh, you're in the shit? Well, that's okay too, because I've been there, or I'm going to be there, or my buddy was just there, right? And all these assumptions, like when I lost all my money before becoming a financial coach, I thought I was a misfit until I learned that Disney declared bankruptcy 7 times.
Well, and I'm happy you brought that up, because that was, and not, I mean, this, oh, I just remembered. This is one of the biggest reasons why I wanted you on this podcast.
Tell me.
You're the one who introduced me to my wife, Ann.
Oh, I forgot that, brother.
I was like,
trying to be a matchmaker, I don't think, because I'm not a very good one. I
no, you're doing good. I mean, for me,
you want to know.
We'll keep it. Let's hopefully keep it that way. But you bring up a great point about, being a financial coach. Well, when Ann and I were first dating, she was in charge of the organization Building Healthy Marriage here in our county. And she had that same struggle, which I find this fascinating with, again, the dynamics of men and women. And here she is, a leader of this organization of building a healthy marriage as she's going through a divorce. And here you are talking about how you had financial struggles and ended up becoming a financial coach. I go to, the Tony Robbins quote that I love to use is, your past doesn't equal your future. So hopefully you learn from your mistakes. But again, that's where I'm going to leave it. I have no idea where I was going after that.
No, that was great. I mean, so when you talk about your wife in that situation, right, and here she is pontificating on healthy marriages while her marriage is crumbling behind closed doors, or here I am working now as the senior vice president of Five Rings Financial, yet I lost all my money and somebody else's money back in the crash and after the crash between 2008 and 2010. Well, the immediate first thought in a very kind of the scarcity model, the labeling model, the judgment model, the critiquing model is, well, shame on Ann or shame on Zach, because look at them running around being hypocrites. No, this isn't about running around being a hypocrite. Like, I love what you said about Tony Robbins, and one of the other guys, I was actually just listening to him this morning. Now, this is more on the Christian slant. Many people know Purpose Driven Life by Pastor Rick Warren out in California. Well, it's 40 chapters, 40 days, and chapter 37, I believe, if my memory is correct, talks about your pain will become your purpose. So I was initially going to go the male route. Oh my God, I lost all my money and somebody else's money. I'm going to crawl in a hole and die, right? Now, not literally, but figuratively. That's what it felt like. I call it the Old Yeller. Remember the movie Old Yeller and the dog?
You're going to make me cry. Oh, Yeller.
Awesome. This is true. Like, as much as women are going to crack up when they hear this part, they're like, yep, see, there it is. Finally, Tommy and Zach admitted all men are dogs. No, ladies, not. But the metaphor applies. Old Yeller gets sick, and what does the dog do? He wanders off into the forest, curls up under a tree, and either option A or B happens. A, he rises up, he heals, and it comes bounding back to his master, and they live happily ever after the end. Or B, Doesn't. Dog dies underneath that tree. Now, even though men aren't dogs, I think figuratively this is what a bunch of us are doing currently. The marriage crumbles, or the business falls apart, or you get laid off. The big failure happens, and we're hurting. And we don't know where to turn to because nobody's ever taught us. We don't have a tool belt to help ourselves. And like we said, Nonprofit 101, Tommy, you're a grown-ass man, help yourself. So you're all on your own. So where are you going to go? I'm headed to the forest, bro. I'm slinking off, and I'm going to curl up under a tree. Isolate, and any therapist and counselor will tell you, please God, don't do that. When you're hurting, the greatest double whammy in the universe is to then go isolate yourself in your pain. So the process here is we got to make it okay. That's that generational modeling. That's shifting that flywheel back that, hey, whoever told you that you're a man and you don't have emotions, yeah, you need to like zap that out of your head. Like remove that story because you're a human being, so therefore you do have emotions. Oh yeah, whoever told you that everything was going to be perfect, you're never going to have any bad days, you're never going to lose any money, yeah, they lied to you about that too. Because every successful guy, and you can pick them, you can even pick the phenoms, right? The Walt Disneys of the world, the Edisons of the world, you know, these men who've accomplished unbelievable things, and we learn about them in history. They failed all the time. In fact, many winners say, yeah, there you go, Napoleon Hill, our brother. Yeah, he goes and studies money to find out you fail your way to success. And now we're going, wait, what did he say? Fail your way to success? Nobody taught me that. And so we've got to break down these cliches and these old stories. That's the movement piece, right? And that's why I say it's not going to happen instantly. Because think through us, men in our 40s. We have 40 years of wiring. And now we're waking up halfway through our lives and going, wait a minute. I've been playing Monopoly for 40 years and I was reading the wrong rule book? Nobody told me. No wonder I'm getting my ass kicked, right? And then you're like, well, where's the real rule book? Like, show me that. So first we've got to believe and accept that we've been playing with the wrong rule book. Then we've kind of got to embrace it, right? That intellectual humility. I don't know what I don't know until Tommy teaches me something I didn't know. So that's humility. Then there's the acceptance part, right? Awareness. I call it Pandora's box, right? We're just bulls in a china shop until we open up Pandora's box of awareness and go, oh, wait a minute. You mean I don't have all the answers? Oh, shit.
Well, because we're trying to fix everybody.
Well, yeah, and there you go. I like how you said that. Fix everybody, not ourselves.
Exactly.
Well, I'm going to fix Tommy and Bob and Sam and Bill. But the hardest thing for any man to do is to turn that mirror back on self and go, what's my crap? What am I not good at? Like your buddy, Tony Robbins, the first thing he says, step one is seeing it as it is. Tell the truth to yourself. And don't sugarcoat it, but also don't over dramatize, right? Just call it like it is. Well, I'm good at this. I suck at this.
I'm going to respect your time, my brother. So, parting words, what to your organization, BeMen?
Yeah.
What do you want these listeners, male and female, to understand about your organization, BeMen? What can they do to help you and BeMen? What is your ask? Because I really need to be better at this because, and my wife loves to tell me I don't ask. And again, it goes back to what you were talking about. I think I can do everything, and I'm a complete idiot. And I mean, like I said earlier, I'm trying to work on the website, and I'm like struggling, and I'm afraid to ask for anybody's help because I asked somebody for help one time, and the next thing they said to me was, "I would love to help you, Tommy. That'll be $500." So That's okay. Life goes on. I move on. So I'm going to ask you, my brother Zach, what can our listeners do to help the BeMen organization and help Zach?
Yeah. Well, first of all, you're not unique. You're unique about a lot of things, but the I'm not good at asking part, join the crew of tens of millions of other men, including myself. I'm horrible at it. It's weird. It's like it's hardwired. Don't ask inside us men. So here's kind of phase one, phase two, phase three, as I see it, for BeMen before I die when I'm 100. Phase one is what we're doing right now, awareness, right? We don't know that we have a problem with men in America until we really talk about the problem with men in America. I think it's the greatest white elephant in the country right now. If you track back societal ailments to their root cause, guess where you land almost 100% of the time? Ill health, the lack of healthy men. Ill health in men. Think about all of the self-abuse, drugs, alcohol, pornography, workaholism. Think about what we've spoken about today about spousal abuse, the whole spectrum from the Me Too movement on one end to rape and domestic violence on the opposite end of that. Think about child abuse, the subtleties of not paying child support or neglect, or dad was just absent my whole life, all the way up to, well, he's the man that beat the crap out of me, right? He's the man that taught me what real anger looks like. So that's kind of phase one, awareness. Let's get to talking about this. Phase two then is invitation. We're looking for people to come be a part of this movement. We need, I call them servant warriors. We need to build an army of servant warriors. We can't just have Tommy and Zach talking about it. We need 1,000 Tommies and 1,000 Zachs talking about this in cities all across America. So as I see it, it's like building clubs or chapters. We've got a BeMen club in Denver, but over time we should have BeMen clubs in every major city in America. And then and all professing, right, those same values, same tenets, character, integrity, honesty, trustworthiness, all doing things to help each other out, become better men, and then all doing give back events in our community to show example positive male role models. And then phase three to me, which is to me my ultimate BHAG, is I'd like to see us build the first ever BeMen Institute. So
What does that look like?
yeah, man, I get super excited about this. So envision a place where men go, and it's not a college, and it's not a church, but it is a place of knowledge and learning, and it's where men serve other men to build better men. And so you could walk through the doors and go down one hall, and there's a bunch of guys, and they're in a Christian men's Bible study. Now you go down a different hall, there might be a bunch of men studying the Quran. You go into the gym and there's a bunch of guys running ball, right? Or there's a bunch of guys on a climbing wall learning how to rock climb. Oh, the backyard? Yeah, go back out on the back patio. There's a Tai Chi class being held right now. Oh, upstairs? Well, we have a culinary arts class. Oh, down in the amphitheater, there's a communications workshop going on, right? Or a parenthood class. It's teaching men the things that we were never taught. Like, we expect you and I in our mid-40s to be fantastic at all these things about being a man. Yet most of us don't even have a tool belt. Or the tool belt we have is missing half the tools, or guess what? We were given the wrong tools for the job.
I want to say thank you for keep saying that I'm in my mid-40s.
Oh, sorry.
Don't say sorry.
Like a day over 29 and a half, man. I'm telling you.
Can I tell you? I was
that monkey pee extract that you're putting in the corners of the eyes there.
Yeah. It's called, I don't know. I was coaching this guy last week, and he thought I was in my early 20s on the phone. I'm like, thank you. This guy was
there you go.
older
Awesome.
than me.
So to kind of wrap that up in a bow, right? Phase one, phase two, phase three. The ask is for people to become involved. The ask to men is drop your guard for just a little bit. and come test drive us, right? It's a la Alice in Wonderland or a la The Matrix. Are you going to take the red pill or the blue pill? Now, it doesn't mean that just by coming and checking us out that you've got to become absorbed and do this the whole rest of your life like I am. I don't expect that. But just check it out. And if it speaks to you, then maybe you want to become one of these servant warriors. And for women, here's the interesting thing. We are not going to get there alone, brother. We can build a men's only movement. However, we need to ask every woman for their support. If they don't believe in us, we're only going to get so far. Because if it's us versus them, we're right back where we started. We're just trying to play the same record over and over and over again. So BeMen right now has like a public facing website, but then we have an open group Facebook page. And in that open group Facebook page, 25% of those members are women. Now here's why. Women know men I don't know. Women know men I'll never know. Now, should those men be introduced to this movement? Should they maybe want to become a part of BeMen? Absolutely. Now, of course, we got to protect the core, because then the third layer is the men's only place to chat and have forums and have events. You know, we don't want a woman in the room because, hell, let's just be honest. We need our man's cave where we can just get real and burp and fart and do all sorts of crazy stuff that men like to do.
What's the links?
So the public facing website is just bemen.org. So BEMEN.org. In Facebook, our page, our nonprofit page is facebook.com, and then it's /BeMen Brothers. And if you find myself or find that, then we can invite you into that online community. And then going deeper to kind of get involved all the way to the core and be invited into these men's only events, then I would just tell people to reach out to me, right? Zach, ZACH at bemen.org is a great way to hit me up.
Fred Zachman, my friends call me Zach. Thanks. I really appreciate. I've been wanting to do this for such a long time, but I keep failing to ask you, and I'm so happy we talked last week, and I'm super excited that we finally did this. And again, a big round of thank you for introducing me to my wife, Ann.
Hey, no problem. Just remember that if I ever come and ask you for something, right?
If you need me to help you bury a body,
Oh, cool.
bury a body. Yes.
No, but in all honesty, things happen when they're supposed to. So appreciate you taking the initiative. And man, I love you, brother.
Love you too, man. And oh gosh, this is so much fun. And I know you're on a time constraint because we could have kept going. So we'll just have to do another part 2, part 3, and just forever.
You know, nothing would make me happier. You know, let we can think of other things to talk about and go round 2, round 3. I'd love that.
Are you still doing the was it beer and bros thing?
You know, yeah, interesting question. So we've been doing we were doing for a little while, and then I kind of discontinued it, but I think I'm going to bring it back because it's absolutely necessary. So we have like annual events or quarterly events that men get invited to. But then what I really think is we need to have that consistent monthly, just a forum, right? Just a place for men to hang out, and that is beers, bros, and bucks.
And the only reason why I brought up is I think that'd be a great opportunity for me to bring the microphone and we talk to some.
Oh, heck yeah! I mean, who wants to listen? Well, a lot of people want to listen to you and I, but they don't want to listen to just you and I forever, right?
No, nobody. Not even my. I think our dog Duke has started listening to me these days. So yeah.
Man's best friend, brother.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome. Pop a microphone in there, and then you start to get the perspective of lots of men. And there are a lot of dynamic men out there.
Once again, Brett, aka my friends call me Zach. Go make some sales. Go make some money for your boys.
Thanks, brother.
All right, we'll talk to you soon.
Friday. Okay.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Blending the Family. The complaint department is now closed for repairs. Try again next time.